Hi everyone, welcome. We'll just give everyone a minute to join us. We've still got a few people coming in from the lobby. Great. I think I'll kick off while a few people are still joining us. Welcome. My name is Louise. I'm the Senior Project Officer in Better Society Capital's investment team, and today we'll be hosting our webinar on the roles available in our investment team currently. So we currently have 5 live investment roles, which we'll be going through today. So those are an investment associate and manager role, which are generalist. We have an investment manager role in our client investment team and an investment manager role working on portfolio. As well as that, we also have an impact manager role on a 12-month fixed contract coming up, which we'll also be going over today. So today I'm joined by my colleagues. So our speakers are Jeremy, our Chief Investment Officer, Maya, who's one of our investment managers in client investment, who will be speaking to that role, and Gabriel, who is one of our investment directors covering portfolio. So for those interested, today we'll give an insight into what it's like to work at Better Society Capital, along with an overview of our recruitment processes. So you'll hear more about a day in the life of these specialist roles and what we look for in a candidate. So in terms of agenda, Jeremy will kick us off with some introductory remarks, including some questions to Maya and Gabriel, and an overview of our recruitment processes. We'll then briefly discuss the various roles, and overall we plan to speak for about 20 minutes to give you the most time for questions and answers. All questions can be submitted anonymously and can be upvoted as well if there's another question that you're interested in hearing the answer to. So with that, let's get going. And I'm going to hand over now to Jeremy.
Thanks, Louise. Well, look, welcome to you all, and thank you for our interest in joining our team. I think we have a few hundred people now joining this call, so apologies if it's taking a little bit of time to join. So maybe just a few quick words on BSC. So we are a market steward on a mission, grow the amount of capital tackling social issues in the UK. And over the last 13 years, we've now helped grow that market over 13 times to 11 billion. We're very proud that we built a market-leading impact investing practice in that time, evidenced by last year us being placed on the Blue Mark Global Leaderboard. That means we've been independently ranked as top quartile across all 8 parts of our impact investing practice. Now, look, there's lots more on our website and in the pack that we shared on BSC and what we do. So we really wanted today's webinar to be more focused on what this would mean for you as individuals if you joined our team. You might be pleased to know we have no slides planned for today. Firstly, I'd like to introduce myself. As Louise mentioned, I'm Jeremy. I've been Chief Investment Officer at BSC since 2013, helping build our team, process, and portfolio. And maybe actually over that period, the thing I'm most proud of is the approach we built to developing people into great impact investors, with the majority of our leadership team today being people who joined us at the roles that you're looking at the manager and associate level. In addition, people from our team have already gone on to become CIOs, CEOs, heads of investment across the impact investment sector in foundations, pension funds, asset managers, and actually also roles in government. So at BSC, essentially, we deliver impact by being a catalytic investor into impact investment vehicles, aiming to seed and then scale them to build the market for impact. And the roles that we're talking about today are all crucial in delivering that. So there are generalist roles to catalyze and manage new investments, our client investment roles to help build and run new products to bring in capital for impact, our portfolio roles to deliver great impact and financial outcomes, and our impact roles to help us learn how we continually improve the impact that we're delivering. If you haven't already, do take a look at the 10 lessons report that we link to in the candidate information. There's lots of great examples there of what we do, but also some of the key things that we've learned in doing it. What you won't see in that report, though, is that most of those examples that are listed there were delivered by people who are sitting in your seat now, who joined us as associates or managers. So, for example, there's the Fair by Design Fund, which has now saved over 300 million for people facing the poverty premium, was designed and developed by Candice, who joined us as a manager. There's the development of the social outcomes market, including the recent announcement by government of the 500 million Better Futures Fund, tackling child poverty, which will support 200,000 young people. And crucial to that has both been Gabe, who is joining us shortly, but also Amin, who joined us as a manager and is now our head of policy. And then there's Impact VC, which is now reaching over 1,000 venture managers, helping them deliver their impact, founded by Dougie, who joined us as a manager and is now our head of venture. So if you're considering a role with us, the most important thing is purpose-driven, interested investment as a tool for good, learning obsessed, and ambitious to deliver the scale of impact of those examples. If you have all of those things, then this can be a fantastic platform for you. I thought it might be helpful to help you find out a bit more about what it's like to work at BSC, to hear from other members of the team. So let me bring in Gabe and Maya, who are going to join us. Gabe, Maya, welcome. Gabe, maybe just to start with you, could you give us some background on yourself and how you came to BSC?
Sure. So I started as a corporate lawyer, actually coming out of university. I did that for a few years and it was fine, but I knew I wanted to do something with purpose at its center. I had no idea what that would look like. So I went back to grad school to try to figure that out. Whilst I was there, I learned about impact investments, heard about BSC, and as luck would have it, BSC was hiring when I graduated, which was back in 2019. I joined BSC as a hybrid impact manager and investment manager. I was deliberately trying to be a little bit of a generalist, worked across all the asset classes that we cover. Now my focus is on our portfolio and in particular our investments when they're at pivotal points in their life stage, whether it's because they're in trouble for a variety of reasons or when it's actually time to wrap them up and for us to exit them.
Thanks, Gabe. And how would you describe the work and culture at BSC?
I think it sounds a little obvious, but culture essentially follows what we recruit for. So all the things that you mentioned, Jeremy, ends up creating the culture that we have. But just one example, everyone is super mission aligned and really purpose driven. That's really easy to say, but that shows up firstly in our policies. So we each get 3 days of volunteering leave, for example, but then that's most importantly reflected in action. I think we're up to over 2,000 hours of volunteering across the team last year. And then that culture gets reflected in the way we do our work. I see that in our investments when things are going wrong, where everyone is under pressure and all that shine of when we first made that investment has worn off. I see the arguments that we have in the room, and they're genuinely not just about the money, but also about the ultimate impact and the people our decisions will affect. And that's that through line of that mission alignment and purpose.
Thanks, Gabe. And look, I think for us, those external roles, they're more than just nice things to have. They're actually pretty crucial, we think, for people learning for a lot of the problems they're trying to tackle at BSC. And maybe one last question, importantly, what do you wish you'd known before you joined for those people on the call?
So I think maybe just how acceptable it is to challenge authority and to admit that you don't know something. As I said, I was a corporate lawyer. I came from a very, I guess, traditional corporate culture where neither was really, I guess, a core part of that culture. But within my first weeks at BSC, I saw an investment manager actually disagree with you, Jeremy, and stand his ground. And I also had an investment director basically stop me mid-flow to say she didn't understand or didn't know about a concept that I had mentioned. And I think that's really important because we work on tricky things. We work on really complicated problems and nobody knows everything or always has the right answer. So we've got a culture that solves for that and adjusts for that.
Yeah, look, we certainly aspire to be a idea meritocracy. We all have a lot to learn, I think. But Maya, let me bring you in. So I guess similarly, could you start with an introduction and tell us what brought you to BSc?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Jeremy. So my journey, I mean, similarly to Gabe, actually, I studied law at university as well, but not like Gabe. I didn't become a corporate lawyer. Did all my internships, decided I actually wanted something slightly more purpose-driven back then. One of my first roles was at the British Business Bank. I was in the strategy team there, and actually one of the first projects I ever did was around social impact investing. And for those of you who may be familiar with the British Business Bank, the way they work is that they would typically intervene where there are market gaps in the supply of finance to small and medium-sized enterprises. And actually, one of the things that we concluded during that project was that no, there is no need for the BBB to intervene in this space because there is this organization called the Big Society Capital, as it was called then, that are doing a great job in this space. Whilst I was there, I worked on lots of different things. And I was working quite closely with the investment teams there, but not actually on the capital allocation side myself. But I was curious by the idea of combining the strategic experience I'd brought across different economic failures and market interventions and combining that actually with a capital allocation space. And during that time, I was speaking to Best Society Capital now, and I met a few people in the policy team there, and they were also hiring. And so I thought it would be a really cool way of going into the investment world, but also keeping that vision of drive and purpose and mission alignments at core to that. And so I've been here for about 4.5 years nearly, and my focus has been mainly on the client investment mandate, which I'm sure I'll touch on later. But during my time here, I've also worked on a few deals in the property and venture spaces.
Thanks, Maya. And I think that last point is really important, actually, regardless of the role that is your primary focus here. There are definitely opportunities out there to work on other projects sort of across the business. Maybe the same question to you, actually. How would you describe the work and culture at BSc?
I mean, it's a great question. I mean, I could speak for hours, I'm sure, but very much resonate with what Gabriel's already shared. Definitely the thing that I think is most unique about this organization is how people have come here from all different backgrounds. Not everyone comes from an investment background, even if they join the investment team. And I think that blend of skills, but also previous experience backgrounds, complements itself very well in bringing a holistic view to a lot of the decision making we do, whether that's investment or more on the market building side of things. And that actually transcends just experience from like a UK focus. A lot of my colleagues are internationally based and have come here from different countries. So rather selfishly, I think it's been really interesting hearing about different cultures and people bring all of themselves to work. And so seeing how that all blends together in one organization is actually something really special.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, you'll hear us talk about the need to be trilingual to do this role, the ability to speak both the language of both the social sector, the investment sector, the government sector. I think each of us speak those languages in different ways. So we're all learning in different places, but between that, our goal is between the organization as a whole. I think we have genuinely great experience across all three of those. Yeah, maybe just the same question to you as well. What do you wish you'd known before you joined?
So many things, but honestly, I think coming into the investment world, not having had that background, I was actually a little bit daunted. I was unsure about the learning curve. I was worried it was going to be really steep. And it was, but tying in with my previous comment around the people and the culture here, I wish I'd known how much people would be willing and ready to help wherever I needed to. No one shies away from that. Even if it's something that you would, think that is a silly question, and I've now been banned from calling any questions silly questions because there is no such thing, and it's so cliche to say, but I think it is true here. But yeah, how people are so willing to help in any different question or area of work that you are doing. And linked to that actually is probably how much BSc values learning and development. Whilst I've been here, I've been fortunate to do a number of qualifications. And that's because I've wanted to, but they've always supported my aspirations in that area. And I think that's something that's maybe unique to BSc, but also how I've been supported alongside doing those qualifications alongside my actual work.
Thank you. No, there's definitely no silly questions in investment. There's always the wrong assumptions that get you in different ways. Louise, let me pass back to you and we can maybe go into some of the roles in a bit more detail.
Thanks, everyone. So we're now going to give you a few headlines on each of the open roles. There's a lot more information available on our website and in the individual job descriptions, and we can also pick up any questions at the end of the webinar. Just a reminder to leave your questions in the Q&A section on Teams, and you'll be able to upvote questions at the end that you really want to hear the answers to. So now we're going to talk about our investment manager and associate roles.
Thanks, Louise. So these are our generalist investment manager and associate roles. So the role is particularly focused on sourcing, assessing, and managing high impact investments. So what does a typical week look like? You will be developing proposals or strategies around our social issues areas. That will involve analyzing new investments, joining our investment committee to help decide on allocations, and working with our existing portfolio to help drive success. Actually, an important part of this role is spending time around the UK, building knowledge of where and how impact is taking place. Yeah, and another really important part of that is working with stakeholders across government, investors in the social sector, those three languages, if you like, we just mentioned, to shift capital towards impact. So what will you learn in this role? You will develop a multi-asset investing toolkit across impact investment. You'll learn our framework to catalyze markets, which starts with the social issues and then seeks out the sustainable business models that can help deliver change. We think a really important part of this role is the opportunity to work across different asset class teams. We believe one of the reasons we've been successful in developing leaders is the benefit of learning breadth, which is really important to help you develop for senior leadership roles. As well as developing as an investor, we'll also be working to develop you as a systems change agent, working with stakeholders to make change happen. Hopefully, you get some sense across all of those that we are investing heavily in your growth in this role and all the roles actually that you will be hearing about today. Let me pass you back to Louise.
Thanks, Jeremy. And I'm now going to pass on to Maya, who's going to talk to us about the client investment role.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Louise. So I'm sure many of you have seen the job description already, but if not, as Louise has mentioned, it's available on the link. The client investment role is actually pretty unique, I'd say. It's very much split into 2 or 3 main areas. And a key difference between this one and the generalist ones that Jeremy has just described is the fact that it is fixed to deliver the BSC's client mandate predominantly. So what that looks like supporting the investment management and portfolio management process for BSC's client mandates. At the moment, there is one public listed trust. I mean, the information is public, and if you give it a quick Google, I'm sure it'll come up, as well as being on BSC's website. But that role looks at our whole portfolio of investments within this particular client mandate. It looks at the financial and impact performance of those investments. And there's a lot of in-depth cash flow, liquidity, and returns analysis that helps us understand how that performance, how those investments are performing. And tied to that, there is also that external lens where we do quarterly reporting to then we have a separate board for that particular investment trust. So there's quarterly reports that you would compile for that board. And that's very much bringing the analysis and insight to life. And it looks at the performance of these particular investments, but distilling it in a very clear and manageable way that the board can understand and can challenge us on to make sure that we are fulfilling our obligations as a portfolio manager correctly. And outside of that, there is also that shareholder engagement because it is a public listed vehicle. And when I say listed, to be clear, it's on the stock exchange. And so there is engagement with the shareholders and clients through the investor meetings, It could be roundtables. It could also be regular portfolio updates that we do in our capacity as portfolio manager. So there's actually a really good chance to represent BSc externally, so at events, but also these independent boards and investment committees where needed. So that's would be the bulk of this particular role, but we're also, as part of our new strategy, expanding out that client investment mandate, and that could look like from an actual investment function, but also from an advisory perspective. So that could be supporting the delivery of various BSc advisory projects. So again, quite an external lens, but like it's quite a cool opportunity to distill a lot of that investment muscle into something that's easily understood by external parties that may not be investors themselves or maybe new to the impact space. And that very much flows through to designing solutions to actually implementing up until the ongoing management of that. So it's to maybe distill it even further, a blend of investment, a blend of portfolio management across financial and impact, but also that external piece, and also a bit of regulatory reporting in line with externally facing and listed vehicles. And as Jeremy's touched on already, there is an opportunity as well to be more involved in broader BSc. So that could be different projects, different strategic pieces, but also potentially doing deals in the other investment focus areas that we currently have, and contributing to our overall impact investment approach.
Thank you so much, Maya. We're now going to go to Gabe, who is going to cover the portfolio role as well as the impact manager role.
Thanks, Louise. Yeah, I guess the portfolio role, there's 3 parts to what we do. Basically, when one of our deals runs into trouble, either financially or an impact, we lead fixing it. So that could be a restructuring, a workout, it could be negotiations. The second thing is when it's time to exit, when it's time to wrap up our investment, we lead that too. And we're judged on how well we deliver not just financial return, but also impact and the effect on the wider market, given our market building mandate. And then lastly, because we invest through fund managers rather than directly, it's part of our job to keep that group of fund managers, that landscape of fund managers healthy and diverse. I guess to make it a little bit more real, a typical day in your life might be, and these are all things that I've done actually. You could start the day leading an internal meeting, convening members of our property team, our legal team, the finance team, to run through your analysis of one of our social housing funds who is in trouble because they need to raise liquidity, and you've done some financial modeling of potential outcomes and looked at which of these options creates the least disruption for vulnerable tenants. You then spend the rest of the morning doing some head down work as you refresh our scoring of the resilience of our priority fund managers, looking at how sustainable they are from a financial impact and human capacity perspective, in preparation of bringing those findings to our board. Then after lunch, you're leading a team learning session, reflecting on the lessons from a difficult situation you managed to resolve that involved one of our lending fund managers going into administration and you having to transfer the funds they managed to a different manager. And you wrap up the day with a call with a health tech expert as you're sense checking some of the assumptions one of our venture managers is making about the exit valuation and route for a mental health platform. Hopefully you got a sense from all of that what you'll get from this role is a real breadth here, and that's the real learning driver. My team, our role spans all our asset classes that BSc covers, all the social issue areas that we cover. You're not just managing a single investment for years. Our engagement is often short and sharp at critical junctures, and then you hand the deal back over to the deal lead. Doing that means you'll get a good grounding of the financial impact drivers in each of our asset classes and understand the many different routes to systems change. And because you're taking this portfolio level view, you'll develop an ability to triage, to prioritize, as well as pattern recognition of problems that will make you ultimately a better risk-focused investor. And then the last part is that you'll be dealing with senior level counterparts in a really intensive way at one of the most difficult points of their careers. And you'll have to learn how to combine empathy with investment decision making under pressure, which is pretty rare, I'd say, and transferable to anything you want to do later on. Two quick things to note about this specific role. So this isn't one of our rotational seats, just like the client role that Maya mentioned. So it's a contrast to the generalist investment manager and associate role. You stay in our team. The breadth comes from working across all the asset classes rather than moving between them. And maybe a little bit unusually, it does have a hard requirement here. So we are asking for applicants to have made a investment recommendations that went to a real decision and have built the analysis underneath them. You don't necessarily need a restructuring or credit background. We'll get you up the curve there. Normally, we tend to hire, as Maya mentioned, into our investment team, a lot of people who don't have investment backgrounds. What we're looking for is rigorous structured thinking, and then we teach the investment decision making. But for this specific role and this type of work, we felt that a solid foundation is actually really helpful here. I'll just also spend 30 seconds talking about the fixed term impact manager role as well. Just because that role is going to sit alongside me in the impact investment management team. I also, as I mentioned, did a little bit of that when I first joined BSC. So I'm at least slightly qualified to talk about that role. So this is, again, a slightly different role. It's an impact manager. You're still part of the investment team. It's a 12-month parental leave cover. Just to note, we are also really open to secondments. If that's something that's possible on your side. The focus of the role is pulling together portfolio level insights and the data infrastructure that underpins those insights for our team, for our investment committee, and ultimately for our board to be able to act on. You'll also be working with the investment team to provide specialist impact support on active deals. But with that, I will hand it back to Louise to take us to the next point.
We hope that's added a lot more colour for you to these roles and that you've come away with a bit more insight. So before we go to questions, I'm just going to recap the next stages of the recruitment process if you're interested in applying. So the closing dates for the investment manager portfolio role is the 12th of August. The investment manager client investment role and the generalist manager and associate roles, the closing date is the 16th of August. And the interim impact manager, the closing date is the 31st of August. After that point, you should then expect, if you're successful, an initial screening call in late August or early September, depending on the role you've applied for, and with follow-on interviews through September. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take us to the Q&A segment of our webinar. So you'll see at the top of your screen a button that says Q&A. You can go there and ask your question. I have a colleague who is moderating this section as well, so it might take a few seconds or a couple of minutes for your question to pop up. But you're also able, I believe, to, or maybe you're not. You might be able, you might not be able to upvote the questions, but if you have a question that's duplicated, that's okay too. So just give me a second while I pick out a question and ask it to our panel. I'm just going to bring everyone on screen again. So we have a question here that says, fantastic to see such a strong focus from BSC on developing talent through these roles. How do you value and balance applicants coming from a more non-traditional route? For example, someone with a technical background alongside experience in public sector investment and innovation. Jeremy, would you like to take that one?
Sure. Well, I hope what's come across is that we're not just looking for a very narrow background of people. For example, for the investment industry, the majority of our team, interestingly, has not worked in the investment industry previously. So we are looking for absolutely that you have a relevant experience in the roles that you've been doing previously, because that can be across all parts of the markets and worlds that we tackle. But the most important thing is actually we're looking that you've had accelerated achievement in whatever role it is that you've been doing. We believe there's a lot to learn in these roles, and so we want to see evidence in the past that you've been able to learn in an accelerated way, because it's a very important part of what we do. It is the case, though, probably when you look at our generalist investment manager and associate roles, if you've had no experience in the investing world, you're probably better placed looking at one of the associate role rather than the manager role. If you've had some adjacent experience to investment, but you've also got evidence of really significant experience in another role that, like, for example, you touched there on the public sector, then that would then you would encourage people to go for the manager role. It is worth saying, don't worry too much about which one you apply for if you're looking at those two roles, whether it's manager or associate. It's very common for us to actually move people between those pools. It's why we half them together, depending on that experience and the fit to other candidates. As hopefully you heard for some of the other roles. So on the portfolio side, Gabe was quite clear there about, I guess, some of the experience that is needed. And on the client investment role, again, we're happy to look at people who have relevant business and looking at enterprises, relevant analysis experience. You don't necessarily have to have committed capital.
And on that similar vein, I found the upvoted questions, so we can answer your most popular ones now. Someone's wondering that for those people who aren't from a traditional finance background, what are some of the things you might look for on a CV or in a cover letter which might stand out for you? And I mean, all of us have been involved in recruitment processes in some way. So maybe if each of you could give an idea of something you might see that might jump out to you. Gabe, would you like to go first?
Yeah, sure. And I guess the one caveat is that there is we do distinguish what we expect or hope to see at associate level or manager level. But I think for me, the biggest thing is showing ownership, evidence of ownership. Has someone actually owned a decision, owned a project, not just supported it? And in doing so, how have they delivered it? Have they demonstrated that they've managed stakeholders appropriately? Have they demonstrated clear, analytical, rigorous thinking? Those are the things that I tend to look for when looking at when scanning a CV.
Happy to go next. I echo exactly what Gabe has said. I think for me, and in particular for the client investment role, I think seeing some evidence of people going the extra mile, so going beyond what they were expected to do. I think that's something that goes far in not only the role, but also the organization and from a progression perspective as well. So if there are tangible points and evidence points around how someone has done that, I think that's always very helpful. And also some evidence of, it's hard. I know we've all done the application, like it's tricky for this to come across, I think, but genuine voice. I think getting a sense of someone's personality or some passion via the questions or a cover letter or even evidence of that in CV, which is arguably harder. I think that always helps illustrate a person, albeit via paper form.
Maybe just to add from my perspective, so look, it's really important that you evidence interest in the impact sector in some way. That can be a volunteering role, it can be a project you've done, it can be a career choice. But it's also actually quite important that you can evidence or at least talk to the role that investment has. We're all here because we think investment is a crucial part, actually, of what's needed to change the world positively. And so, evidence that you engage with that you share you share that interest with us is obviously going to be a really important part of these roles.
Thanks, everyone. We have a couple of questions asking what the key difference is between the associate and the manager's roles, and how will someone know which one is right for them to apply to?
Yeah, let me maybe touch on that, Louise. I mean, as I mentioned, it's largely around experience. There's a higher bar, if you like, for the manager role in terms of the extent to which people you'll see when you compare the two different JDs, the distinction is have people been involved in developing the answers to problems to actually delivering on them. So it's the extent to which you have moved that sort of part of your career. But as I said, I wouldn't worry about it too much. Have a look at the two. Have a think in terms of which you think you are a best fit for, and apply, and we will actually, we will make that distinction ourselves. Clearly, we will always check with people whether they're comfortable putting themselves forward for that other role. But it is, I hesitate to say years of experience thing. It really isn't, because it depends a lot on your background and what you've done. But it is, it's about your level of experience at actually developing solutions to problems, or just having been involved at earlier stages of them.
Thanks, Jeremy. There's a question that says, is there a downside to applying to more than one of these roles? And does that impact how an application is being assessed? I'm also happy to jump in as someone who helps kind of on the back end of hiring. But we run a blind recruitment process. So actually, when we are assessing applications, we are kind of reviewing the answers to the questions, and those aren't attached to each other. We're reviewing them separately, and those also aren't attached to names. We don't look at whether someone has applied to multiple roles necessarily. So no, it wouldn't have an effect. Does anyone have anything else they'd like to add on to that?
I think, look, would really encourage people to put themselves forward for the role that they're most excited by. I mean, if it's relevant, in terms of numbers, we tend to get very large numbers for our generalist roles. So there is a greater chance that your application honestly gets lost in that very large amount, just when we try and screen through different amounts. So I would really encourage, I guess, people to look at the full range of roles in the organization, but most importantly, work out which role you're most excited by and that you think you would do the best job in.
There's a very interesting question which says, what are some of the skill gaps you're looking to address in the team? Is there anything we're kind of particularly looking for, where we think we could be doing better?
I mean, look, the clear one for me, which has been an important part of our rounds really probably for the last year or two now, is around technology skills, and particularly AI. As I hope you'll see in the candidate pack, we're very focused on technology and AI. We have a dedicated person in our team who actually was also a former investment manager who is just developing AI tools. But we very much believe that everybody on our team will be a builder in terms of using AI. But also, this is a world that's newer. We've all got a lot to learn. So we expect to be learning from our candidates, as we already are learning from lots of people across the organization on that. So that's that's an obvious one from my perspective. But Gabe, Maya, what about in your roles? Are there any things that you're particularly looking for in terms of complementing existing skills of the team?
I think for me, so obviously, as I said, there's a requirement on the role in my team around investment background. But actually, something that I'd love to also have on my team, just because I'm losing someone who brought this background to my work, is someone also with that that social enterprise, that frontline expertise, that perspective. Like I said, all our decisions are made and we're optimizing for not just financial return, but also ultimately the impact that our investments are going to have on people. And that's just a really, really important perspective that I've picked up over my time at BSc, but I don't come from that background. I didn't work in that background prior to BSc. And so that's also something that I would love to have more in my team as well.
Thanks, Gabe. Yeah, I mean, in terms of, I wouldn't say these are so much skills gaps at the moment, but I'd say something that we would love to have in the client investment function in particular is the skill of being able to be quite agile in thinking and adapting from tasks. I realized earlier I didn't give a flavor of day-to-day activity, but there are often a lot of fast-moving pieces, especially when it comes to reporting, deadlines, and the ability to switch hats quite quickly, I think is quite important for this particular role. Also someone that would thrive in an environment which is quite fast moving. Like I said, there's lots of moving pieces sometimes, so the ability to be agile but also still work at pace at different intervals, I think is very important. I echo actually Gabe's point around someone who perhaps brings a bit of that social enterprise background into the team. That's not something we directly have, I don't believe, within the client investment function. But also taking a step back, even people that have worked at a fund themselves. I think that's quite interesting to help us understand a bit more around the governance processes that go on within the funds. We have a flavour of it as almost operating at a fund of funds level. But that actual experience, I think, would be quite helpful for us. Jeremy, I know you're quite familiar with this role, obviously. Anything to add on the client investment piece specifically?
I think you've summarised it well, Matt.
We've had a couple questions come through on training, which I think is a really important question. So one of the questions is, would an investment associate be expected to complete the CFA qualification in impact investment? And then we have another question more broadly about what we do to support people getting up the curve who maybe have less experience, or I think this is a good opportunity for us to talk about generally our approach to training at BSc.
Why don't I start on sort of CFA and impact investing and assumptions, then maybe I'll pass on to you, Gabe, Maya, to you to talk about how your training has been supported and how that's, just the honest actually experience of what you've had. So for all of our, for every individual, we make the training bespoke. So we don't require people to do things just for the sake of it. So if people have limited experience in impact investing previously, then we think the CFA in impact investing, which you'll see from the candidate pack, one of our team, Rebecca McDonald, is the chair of and was involved in, is a great fit. But actually, if somebody comes to us with experience there, that training will be less, that qualification honestly will be less useful for them, we'd rather we devoted their learning time to something else. So we think it's a great course. We think it's a great global overview actually, and a large part of our role is looking at what everyone's learning globally and work out what we can bring to the UK. But the extent to which we will suggest people do it will depend a lot on their backgrounds. It's the same actually for the CFA. So a number of people in our team have done the CFA. They've also done the KIA, which Maya can talk to in a second. Again, we don't require that from people, but depending on your background, depending on what we think are the most important things you need to learn to get up the curve, then those are all things we support and ultimately will pay for people to do if we think it's the best for you and your role. Gabe, why don't I pass over to you and you could talk about I guess how your learning journey maybe, and then we can go on to Maya.
Yeah, absolutely, Jeremy. And I think, there is that aspect, the formal learning aspect, courses, qualifications. I did a credit course, which was really helpful, not coming from a specific credit background to get that. More than anything, that framing, the structure in which to then hang decisions on which is really helpful, and has applied to a lot of the non-credit work that I do. But actually, I want to also talk about both the internal training that we run, and then also the on the job learning that you'll do. So internal training, you have a team of people who have done a lot of really interesting, very difficult and different things. And we look to bring that all together in terms of the training that we offer our wider team. We record videos, we design courses. I've just been tinkering with an AI-built simulation to help our investment team pick up on early warning signs of trouble in their portfolio. So it's, we keep trying to evolve it, keep trying to iterate it to help everyone get better. And then the other piece on the job learning, I think, it's a lot of jobs will talk about on the job learning. You naturally, when you do something, you learn how to do it. But I think what really is different with us is we have this learning culture, which leads to everyone just being very intentional about how we treat learning on the job. And that shows up in the work assignments that people get, the way they're staffed on deals and projects. The decision makers there have people's learning and development in mind when they make those decisions. But then also the more informal things, the more informal suggestions that you'll get from people as you're working with them. As I was about to take up an IC observer seat, Jeremy, just offhandedly said, "Oh, make sure to keep a decision log of all the decisions and test yourself on them, and when your term ends, look back at them and basically see how you've done." And it's those sort of layer of intentionality to the on-the-job learning, which then just makes it so much more valuable and useful as you develop. But Maya, anything you want to add?
Not specific. I mean, I fully agree with what you have said and also what Jeremy said. I mean, my experience has been that learning is very self-driven, not because the organization isn't encouraging you to, but as Jeremy said, you're not forced to take any particular qualifications, which I think is a good thing. I like the fact that there isn't an emphasis on doing things for the sake of doing them. It has to be something you're actually interested in. And in my experience, I've got the most value out of things that I've done because I think that there is a genuine benefit to my work if I do them or my future career aspirations. So I think that's something that I value about the way BSc approaches it, rather than saying we have to do the IMC or have to do the full CFA suite, because the on the job learning is very important as well. And there's a risk that you just end up in, qualifications paralysis because you spent the last 4 years doing various qualifications and haven't done any deals, and on the flip side. So I think there is a balance to be struck. And yeah, it's very much tailored. I personally work best by trying something, learning as you do, and then supplementing that with a theory rather than the other way around. Others may view that differently. But no, I agree with what you both have shared already.
Maybe just to add on Gabe's, you were talking about the internal training we run. So we run a How We Invest course that goes through all the different things we've learned. It includes things like reality DD, where we look back at case studies. But I think what brings it all together is this principle that, and I think this came from Google originally, that you get your best people to teach. So we always want everybody across our organization, everybody needs to be a teacher, everybody needs to be sharing, because I think what we've learned is when you stop, think about what you've learned and aim to share it with others, it really helps you learn yourself. Actually, it helps you realize what's relevant that you've been doing and worth sharing and passing on. So that's very much the sort of mentality, I guess, we try and bring across the organization, but also then, how we then share that learning. We run courses for the market. I'm an industrial professor at UCL, where I run a course in impact investing. We all lecture at business schools, etc. So yeah, we try and make it a core part of what we do, I guess.
I think we have time for maybe 2, max 3 more questions. I'm going to combine this one. So the first half of the question is, how has the vacancy in your team come about? It might be different for all the roles. And also just to touch on quickly the structure of the team that you're working in, so people have an idea of how many people they might be working with. Gabe, would you like to kick us off?
Yep, sure. On my side, as I mentioned, the role has arisen because one of my team members has left. He's going off really to follow his first true calling, which was working directly with frontline enterprises and community organizations. He's going to staying within our sector, staying in the social investment sector, but he wants to be just much more closer and much more closer to those end investee organizations. He wants to be talking to them, every day, and I think he's going to be fantastic at it. It's a huge loss for me. But I think he's going to be fantastic at it. So that's why we're recruiting on my team.
Okay, do you just want to touch on your sort of team size and who people would be working with?
Yep, sure. So my, I guess, sub team is me and then 3 investment managers underneath me. 2 of those are rotational positions. So we'll have people coming into our team and then after 2 years rotating into one of the asset classes team. And then we have this position that we're recruiting for, which will stay within our team and will develop as essentially a specialist doing the work that I just talked about around special situations and exits and so on. We sit as part of the wider impact investment management team, which really owns the it provides the portfolio level view to help all of us make better investment decisions, and also ensures that all the investments in our portfolio are contributing to our mission. It also owns the, for lack of a better word, the impact investment engine that drives all our investing activity, really. And that's a slightly wider team, and it includes teams that focus on portfolio analysis. It includes the impact team as well.
Maybe let me go next, because one of the roles when we're looking at the generalist side is joining that team that Gabe just mentioned in terms of the impact investment management area. And then the other role is, at least in the first part of the rotation, joining the lending team. So our lending team is, I think, 8 or 9 people, and it also includes social outcomes, renewables, blended capital. It's quite a sort of diverse investing. It's about 40% of our portfolio. Both of the generalist roles, we hire for these every year. We have a pretty regular schedule, and they've come about really because people will have moved on to being promoted to director, moving on to different roles in sort of up through the organization. I guess we are also growing as a team. But Maya, let me pass on to you just to talk about the client investment role, specifically the almost cross-organizational team, I guess you have there, and then how the role came about and what it will be doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's slightly unusual because actually I'm leaving. So the client investment manager that will join will be working under the managing director, Hamina, who is absolutely fantastic. I'm not just saying that. Honestly, working with her has been one of the things that has probably kept me here for 4.5 years. She's truly a wonderful person to learn from. But in terms of the size of the team, as Jeremy said, it's pretty cross team. So you'll be working with colleagues from finance, from operations, from our investment partnerships and advisory functions, but also more broadly with the role is in the investment team to begin with, to be clear, but you'll be also working with different different deal leads across the different asset classes, so the lending team, the property team, and the venture teams, as well as the leads of those particular lost my words, pretty cross-functional, and I think it's actually a really cool way to get exposure to lots of different parts of the organization, as well as obviously the impact management teams as well.
Thank you. So I think I'll ask my final question, I think, and then I think we'll wrap up. Thank you so much to everyone who's asked questions, and I'm sorry if we weren't able to get to yours. So Jeremy, this one is probably for you. What do progression pathways look like at BSC? Is there a formal pathway, or does this happen more ad hoc?
Sure. Yeah. And so as I touched on, one of the things I'm most proud of actually is the extent to which people who've come in at this manager and associate level, what they have gone on to do. So most of our heads of department have come in at that level. There've been multiple people who've left and taken on senior roles, actually not just in the UK, but also globally. We've got people, I think, in Australia, Canada, others who sort of are running impact investment portfolios. So progression is hugely a function of, what people come in with and clearly, how fast they progress and what they can show us that we do. We're really, we don't have prescribed periods. We, as I touched on earlier, we want to be a full meritocracy. So we are really focused on what people can deliver. So if somebody comes in and they show us that they can achieve incredible things very quickly, then there's the potential to progress very quickly. There are a number of roles, both within our organization, but also both within the investment team, but also across the organizations. We've got a number of people actually who've moved into our policy team, into our advisory team, and others from the team, as well as we've talked about, this being a stepping stone to other broader roles in the market. But Gabe, Mar, I don't know whether you want to touch on anything from your perspective in terms of how progression has felt or what people should be aware of coming in.
I can keep it fairly short, Jeremy. I think in my experience, it's been always a two-way conversation with my manager. So we have end-of-year reviews and mid-year reviews, and we always touch on what I've historically touched on, what the next 12 months look like, and if there is scope to start getting ready for the next level. So I joined in as an associate. I'm now a manager, and I've personally felt it's always been quite clear, but I think I've also benefited from having a fantastic line manager who has very much supported my goals and has enabled me to hit those with a view to progress. Okay.
Yeah, I agree. It's just how important your line manager is. It's not it's not a big corporate kind of, oh, you do this, and this, and then you get promoted. For me, like I said, I came in as a generalist. I deliberately wanted to try to do a little bit of everything. And it was only through some really long and deep conversations with my line manager, who was absolutely fantastic, that we identified, okay, this is an area that BSC needs a bit of help in and needs someone to do. And actually, this is something that I find really interesting, and that's where I wanted to develop. And that's sort of how it came across. But yeah, it's an ongoing conversation, essentially. It's not a once a year, once a couple of years kind of conversation. It goes through your line manager relationship throughout.
Maybe just to add on that, because Gabe, you touched on it. Actually, we make coaching available to everyone in the team, which is quite important. So what we're aiming for in that coaching is really to find the intersection between people's personal mission and the opportunities that are available across BSC. So we work pretty hard across teams actually for that. But Louise, I'm conscious we're probably running out of time, so let me pass back to you for any closing words. And just to say for everyone who's joined, thank you so much for your interest, and hope we get a chance to talk soon. But Louise, over to you.
To second that again, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. I will send out the recording to this tomorrow, so you will be able to rewatch it and listen back to any of the answers given today. I will also re-email, but I have emailed today as well, some more information on our recruitment processes, as well as the pack, which covers all the roles we've discussed today. And also, if you have any burning questions, you can email me and I'll try and do my best. So thank you everyone for joining us today, and I hope it was insightful, and please enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.